So thank you so much, guys, for coming out. I'm very, well, me and Armin were just saying, I'm very surprised that we have this much people to talk about intranet. Like, who would have thought this much people are interested in intranet? But thank you guys for coming. Just out of sheer curiosity, is anybody engaged in an intranet project right now? Cool. Good to know. So hopefully you guys will learn something or learn things not to do. So how to create an award-winning intranet and how errors led to our success.
Can we have these after or no, the slides? Can you share some of them? Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so then we'll put them on the event page.
Okay. So how our errors led to success. This will be a common theme in our presentation. We had various errors come up through the project, and we want to highlight these and share with you guys. So just a quick introduction of me and the team. So that's me on the right-hand side. Radley Dioso, as I mentioned, senior UX UI designer for IBM, consultant, and I was the lead designer on this intranet project.
So Armin, I was the UX guy on this project. You already know my line.
I'm Kathy, I guess I was the overhead. No, I was part of the team that did a lot of the user research before we actually started going down the path of actually designing the internet. So worked with them from a design thinking perspective, personas research, and all that kind of stuff.
So just a bit of overview of what we'll be presenting today. This whole big thing is one big use case. We'll touch on some of the processes that we were learning and kind of figuring out as we went along. And then the challenges, this is a big one. We went through a lot of challenges, how we figured it out, and then what we actually did to resolve these challenges. But really, we're just here to bitch and complain, to be honest. Just joking. This is a post-mortem. And funny enough, we didn't really talk about this project afterwards, so this is kind of a learning thing for the three of us. We'll kind of hash it out and talk it out as we go along. So before we started the project, we wanted to come up with a clear objective and a clear goal of what we wanted to produce. So the objective reads, create a custom and modern employee portal for MLF workforce from scratch. MLF was our client, Maple Leaf Foods. But reading this objective, there was clear errors already in the objective. Custom and modern. Is custom even feasible from a technical perspective? Knowing the platform that the client uses, can we even do custom? Modern. Is that the need that the user wants? We don't even know. Even starting the project, we don't even know what modern is. What does modern even mean? It's very subjective, right? So this comes up to our first error, making assumptions early. You never want to do that within at least an intranet project. And we have a little counter at the top right there. This will be our first error of the night. So Armin will talk about a bit of the pre-work that went into creating the intranet.
Thank you. So little did we know, we actually didn't know we made that error before we even started. So we thought, as we jumped into this, let's do what any good designer would do. We need to figure out what problem it is that we're solving. So, boom, our pre-work. One, where on earth do we even start from? Can we do some content audit, get a good as-is state analysis, figure out what was wrong, and most importantly, what are the existing issues? That goes back to what problems are we solving? So, just to give you a look over of the as-is state, it's very Soviet chic. As you can see, it's from the 90s. And I just do want to point this out because it's not necessarily indicative of what we saw. But if you look up here, it says May 2014, 2017, right? It looks fine for when this was submitted, but it was actually close to 8 months old when we were there. That's a quick poll. Doesn't seem that quick to me. All right, and so this was the information architecture. We have 3 things. The menus are this big, and it's really similar to me on a treadmill, for example. It's bloated, it's confused, and it causes mayhem for anyone that interacts with it. It's just not pleasant. So, where do we start? One, we knew just a quick overview wasn't going to cut it. We had to do that deep dive. Go through everything, what can you fix, what can you look at, and most importantly, the heuristics review against as-is state. Now, this was to alleviate any concerns from the client because they understood the massive overtaking that we're actually trying to go after. So are there any quick wins that we can provide them to alleviate them and take care of that whole stakeholder management section? And lastly, Once we did 1 and 2, we felt like we would have a decent understanding of a rough idea, of where we were, and then we can talk about the objectives with the client to see where we actually wanted to go. Now, the content audit. Simply put, it's nothing fancy. We went through each and every single page. Hard work, it's repetitive, not fun. But there were a couple things that were very interesting that popped up to us right away. First, the content was out of date. Some stuff was 2, 3, 4 years old. Not necessarily the best for something or an environment that actually requires rapidly updated information. 2, the existing content was rarely updated and not well maintained. That's slightly different from the out-of-date content because we kind of took the approach of, this is more of a psychological issue. I will publish my content and it's in the ether. It's gone. I don't see it anymore. And nobody actually had that sense of ownership. And lastly, non-existent content guidelines. I'm sure everybody knows this. Some people wrote short novels, some people wrote bullet points. It was very interesting to convey that information. Or sorry, how that information was conveyed. And lastly, these were the existing issues that we were able to deduce from our pre-work, which was useful information leads to poor adoption, and it has this vicious cycle over and over again. The worse adoption, the less people are inclined to actually put out that information. 2, the lack of content accountability. No one had their name attached to anything. I couldn't find site owners. I couldn't do anything. So it's just out there. It's not my problem. Somebody else can deal with it. And lastly, there were no incentives. Like any of us, people work incredibly hard. Why should they put in the extra time and effort without compensation to upload the content? But to be safe, we knew we weren't done here and that we had to do additional user research.
Right. And from a user research perspective, I heard you guys all talk about where you're from, and I know I have some consultants in the room, I know I have some researchers in the room, I know I have some students in the room. And I gotta tell you, one of the amazing things about Maple Leaf Foods, when I first went in there, is they were trying to set up a new shop that would actually be their user experience shop. And they wanted to actually set it up right, so they were willing to work on approaches with us, working on how to set it up properly. We didn't even know the internet project was coming when we started the research on who Maple Leaf Foods was. They have 13,000 people across Canada, all over the place. Over 9,000 of them are in plants, and our plant workers have no access to a computer. Or, as I learned on tours that I took in the plant, if they do have access, imagine when you go into a plant, you are actually gowned, like right from your feet. You have to sanitation and sanitariness is huge because there's a raw portion and there's a cooked portion. So by the time you go in, you are completely outfitted. And one of the problems we found out within the first week is they had to get a new mouse every week. They kept getting phone calls from a new mouse. I need a new mouse. I need a new mouse at the meat house. And I'm like, why do you need a new mouse? Well, I'll tell you that, because when they go to do it, they've got their hands covered in meat and they grab the mouse and they do what they need to do, right? They make the changes, strip the gloves, go wash hands, new gloves go on, fume, go back on the line. Right? Of course they need a new mouse weekly because it got gummed up with pork, poultry, and packaged meats. It's the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps of Maple Leaf Foods. And it was great, right? So learning about them and learning who they were was a huge part of this. So when I got talking to them, I said, we need to do, real frontline research. We need to get out and talk to people. They said, okay, how many? Really? As a consultant, how many? Like,
Wow.
Seriously? That never, ever, ever happens, right? So we started talking about the different workforces, what they had. We decided to make some calls that if they didn't have a computer accessible to them right away, we were going to put them on a second path to actually interview. And we ended up doing between 40 and 50 interviews across Canada. So we went from all the way, and most of them were for phone calls, from Alberta all the way out through Quebec, through the eastern provinces. We took data from people who had been there 6 months, anywhere to 29 years, 30 years. There are people that work on the road. There are people that go out to the actual, there are people that actually go out to grocery stores or into restaurants and are selling products, so they're part of the workforce, all the way to the people who actually just work in data entry. So we've had from data entry people all the way up to VPs coming in to talk to us. And as you can imagine, we were looking for actionable insights. We were looking to understand work locations. Some of the people work in plants, so they have an office, but it's loud, it's noisy. You have physical work clothes on, because the plants are kept at about 4 degrees Celsius, right? Colder in the raw side, a little warmer in the packaged meat, or the ready to eat side. So the location actually affected how they were and who they were. And at the end of the 50 interviews, we actually came up with about 5 personas that actually outlined who they were. And we're not sure exactly what the personas are, but the cool things that we learned, because this internet project came in as we were doing this, is we really got into some things about what motivates people. Like, what are the motivators to actually have people want to come on and use IT solutions? And understand that for the area we were working in, we were working not with the marketing department, but with the information services department. So we really needed to understand what motivated people. We understood pain points, opportunities. We understood the software that they came with. We understood from a social media perspective how they actually reacted and worked with things. We started really looking at who the workforce was. And as I said, I give tons of credit to Maple Leaf for actually wanting to go through this exercise. Again, 40 to 50 people, 2 months. It was over the summertime, so it took us a little bit of time to get through it all. And at that same time, the internet project came. So this all became part of a journey map of how people went around, but it actually informed the design thinking, which is what we started off the internet project with. So within our background of who Maple Leaf was, who the people were that were there, who the people were who were going to be using the intranet, we could actually start and go into a design thinking workshop and making sure all those people were represented as they came into the workshop. So when we started the design thinking and we kicked off, we did 3 days, 3 separate groups on 3 different days, brought them in from plants, brought them in from out of town, mobile workforces. We brought in workforces that worked across from finance all the way to HR, to learning, to training, and communications in different groups. And overall, through the 3 days, we probably had 20 different participants, possibly even more, going through design thinking. And we always asked them 3 questions when they first came in. What do you like about your current internet? What don't you like? And name a website that you really like from a communications perspective. So we could actually get some research into how people actually use stuff, right? And then we went through typical design thinking. We went through empathy maps, understood the personas of the groups that we were using. We took them into pain point analysis, understood, got them to agree on pain points. Took 2 pain points, went through ideation to prioritization to an alignment statement, such as a hill, coming out with storyboards. And then as they left the room, there was a sign that said, this is your internet 5 years later. Give us your empathy now. What are you feeling if what we just envisioned in these storyboards came true? What would it be? And we got that sentiment as they walked out of the room. And all of that turned around to help inform us on a little bit more research that we probably needed to do. I'll give you an example. I work in information technology, obviously. I work for IBM. I always thought PM, project manager, right? Nope, PM means packaged meats. Don't think it means anything else. A hot dog is not a hot dog, it's a wiener. Get the language right. But when you talk to people, depending on where they came from, they had different language that they used to describe things. And as you talk to them, you say, my God, this is the exact same thing. It's just, they're just different. This is in the plant, and this is how they talk about it. This is in the office, this is how they talk about it. Oh my gosh, go to training, and this is how they talk about it. So we knew we had some extra work to do. And I think that leads us into our other forms of research.
That's correct. So there are 2 main things that I just really want to highlight here, and a lot of them actually came through what Kathy just mentioned, in the sense that there is that fierce defense of their particular nomenclature. They're very particular about it, and that's completely fair. So what we did, first, card sorting. Just if this helps you guys out, because I know you're going through your project right now. Optimal sort, that's what we used. Give me 2 seconds to write that down. All right. We went ahead and did the site map and page hierarchy mapping. Okay, what is it roughly going to look like? How can we make the utility bar useful for people, the primary navigation, and the site map as well? We took a look at that. Third, went through detailed IA mapping. Now, unfortunately, this part we can't really show because it is a work product and we don't want to upset our client. But what I wanted to do was actually talk about the basic structure. So this is essentially what we decided upon for each major branch and page. Let's say that's one particular page that you have. There's a section title, the description, and each page that falls underneath. Typical, nothing fancy, we didn't do anything special there, but we added 2 other things. That was name 1 and name 2, and the green, yellow, and red. So what do these actually indicate? First, the names are who owns what particular page. The first thing we wanted to do was add accountability, especially from a maintenance perspective. So if one particular sub-menu or menu goes under, you know exactly who to go and yell at. 2, out-of-the-box template and custom, just in case you can't read it. This allowed us to actually talk to our development team a little more and said, the way that we are envisioning these pages, you can do this out of the box with SharePoint. You can do a one-time customization, or sorry, one-time developed template that can be recycled across 15 different things, and it's going to be custom. This really helped them with the estimation, or from the estimation perspective as well. Now the best part was, the hard part was done. You could design. We gathered our research. We wanted to synthesize the feedback, actually design the thing, do some guerrilla testing, and present to the SLT, which is the senior leadership team, just in case anyone's unfamiliar with the acronym. Stickies. Stickies everywhere. Anyone who's been through design thinking, I'm sure you know what it is. As you can see, my gorgeous colleague right there. So, these stickies essentially ended up replacing the treadmill in my nightmares. And what we did was we grouped them and found common themes, common sentiments. What is it that we were able to actually extract from the exercises that we ran? And I really want to point out number 1 here, because this was, if I can quote Radley here, our North Star, so to speak, because it was the 3 most important things for the particular user as we went through this. This would be their need for collaboration, communication, and efficiency. These were paramount to them, and the only way that we were able to get them on board for the internet. This was found after we synthesized. 2, the competitive work environment. It is fiercely competitive there from our understanding, which seems to be good. It motivates people, it pushes them forward, and really causes them to learn and want to learn what other people are learning. And 3, from the whole cultural perspective, which is what we also found incredibly interesting, is that in previous IT projects that they had there, it always seemed like the exec agenda was being pushed rather than listening to the users first. So we knew that we actually had to go and try and alleviate a particular user need and issue first, get some buy-in, and then we can start putting in the exact goals. And I just want to highlight just a couple first iterations that we did. So essentially we went ahead, made 7 or 8 rough wireframes. Here are things that we want to do, features that we think would be useful, and Radley with his gorgeous design skills would be able to take things there. But there is one thing I want to mention before we actually move to the finalized iteration, and I really, really have to take my hat off to Radley here, because I don't know how many of you are like hardcore UX versus visual design.
Which one?
So who's hardcore UX? Sorry, that was a poor question on my part. And then who's hard visual? Oh, no visuals. Okay, well for those of you that are...
Support.
This is the UX team.
Just double checking. So yeah, everybody has worked with a visual designer, and you know you butt heads all the time. You're pushing for that user functionality, let's make this useful. Visual design is, it needs to be pleasing. But this was really strange because we were able to meet in the middle so often and actually defer a lot of the tension that exists in normal projects. So you have, let's say, open search bar here, closed search bar here, quick links down here with quick links up there, and then as you talk, you iterate, you bounce ideas more, boom, you have your first design iteration. We're able to see things in kind of a let's meet halfway type of thing. We still have our beautiful design with the quick links, the top search bar, and at this point we felt decently comfortable that, hey, this is our first iteration, we can actually go out and do some guerrilla testing. Side note, yes, that photo did make me say the diet starts tomorrow. So, okay, guerrilla testing went incredibly well. People were happy. Great, the user feedback is positive, and most importantly, we were able to do a second round of user research as we went through. Because, and I'm going to steal Kathy's quote here because she says this all the time, if you can go into a call center and read their stickies, 80% of the work is done right there as far as research goes. And that rang out true in this case as well. Because as we went, we noticed that everybody just had bookmarks. I don't want to go to the internet. I need my 6 or 7 things, and then I'm done, I'm gone. Which actually allowed us to validate the quick links. Great, okay, we have some user need and preference there. And, okay, we're going to present that to the SLT. Our user feedback was positive. Let's keep this momentum going.
I'm always the bearer of bad news, and I don't know why. But this is where we hit another roadblock. It's funny because we built up all this momentum going into the first iteration, and we were feeling really good because, you know, you're presenting to employees and they're really liking it. You're presenting to the SLT team, and I I specifically remember that meeting because Kathy was coaching me on how I should present myself to the SLT team, and she was giving me pointers. And it went really well, and SLT's like, yeah, let's do it. And then we hit our roadblock. And what our roadblock was, we presented to our real product owner. For those who don't know what a product owner is, it's an agile term. Product owner is the person who says yes or no. They make the decision. And going into this meeting with the product owner, not once had we had one meeting with this guy. We didn't have one conversation with him. We didn't know who he was till this meeting. And it was a disaster. It was a
Side note, he was invited to the interviews, but he didn't show up. He was invited to all 3 days of design thinking, but was too busy to come.
Yes.
We did try. He was invited.
But nevertheless, we presented to him. We did as best as we could to explain our first iteration, where we come from, all this research that we gathered, and what the employees were saying about our first iteration. And he didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to hear it. He didn't. And as a designer, it kind of felt like this. We don't like you, and we don't like your designs. And I felt like all the blame was pointed right here. And you could ask my wife, I couldn't sleep that night. I felt really bad. Which brings us to our second error. Your users don't control the money. At the end of the day, you can do all the research you want, you can get all the buy-in you want, but if you don't know who you're selling it to, as consultants, you're not going to get the yes or the no that you want. So know who your product owner is right at the beginning of the stage, and make sure they're part of it every step of the way, or else you're not going to get buy-in. So where do we go from here? I was feeling down, I couldn't sleep that night, but I was willing to face this challenge head on. So, let's see what happened. There were competing visions, obviously, from our vision that we came up with to what the product owner wanted to see. And then let's reevaluate our designs. Let's see what exactly worked, and then let's try to meet in the middle. So what just happened? Unclear product owner, like I just said, we didn't know who the product owner was, so we should have really started off the project knowing who that person was and made sure they were part of the process every step of the way. We had very different visions. I remember clearly in that meeting, he was doing a sketch and a mock-up right there while I was presenting to him. And I don't even think he was listening to me while he was doing his little sketch. But if I knew that he had this sketch, I would have worked with it and say, hey, let's try to make this work with the backed up user research. And then politics. I'm not going to go too much into this, but there was a whole array of internal politics going on that made us lose focus as well. And then competing visions. After we presented this, everyone and their mama had some type of opinion on where we should be designing. We got suggestions like, make it look like GE, have just one search bar on the homepage. Make it look like Microsoft with that tile design. And the craziest idea was make it look like Verge, because we wanted to, wow. Yeah. So at this point, we want to reevaluate our designs. What exactly worked from our previous iterations, and let's go from there. So we started off with a few new wireframes, very different from what we did, taking in everybody's opinion, especially the product owner, and then augmenting that with the user research that we had in our back pocket. Again, going through each of the iterations, circling what worked, what didn't, and then wanting to blend that in with what our product owner's vision. And then we came up with a new approach. Oh, I think this is all right, but we came up with a new approach. We realigned what our design process was into something that fit with our client, and I think Amna will talk about that bit. I guess I'm going to do it. So we came up with a new approach. We revamped our design process. We mapped up a clear design and decision approval process. You can see here on the right-hand side, this was actually me and Armin whiteboarding our design process because we figured what the process was beforehand wasn't quite working. Let's try to meet somewhere meet in the middle. So this is actually the steps we took to make that process work. It has getting sign off from business, it has getting sign off from technical, and then ultimately getting final sign off from all parties. Engage product owner more often, again, mentioned that before, and then stick to our North Star. You know, our product owner had a very strong vision of what they wanted to see within their intranet, but we didn't want to lose sight that our users were ultimately our client, right? They were the ones that were going to use the intranet on a day-to-day basis. So we didn't want to lose that North Star. And then we had to get buy-in. Business and dev buy-in, reevaluating that process, getting the business buy-in, showing them our mock-ups early on, handing that off to the technical team, saying, hey, is this actually technically feasible, knowing the platform and its limitations? And then championing our sponsored users. So this is an important point to note out. Doing an intranet is a very large task because you have a lot of departments and a lot of stakeholders involved. As designers, we have a lot of duties and tasks on our plate, and you can't go out to every department and start getting buy-in on every single stakeholder. That's a day job in itself, right? So we identified key stakeholders or sponsored users, and we showed them our designs. We told them what we were trying to do. We got buy-in from them, and they essentially went out and started pitching this to other departments within the organization. So which freed up our time so we can focus on the user research and the design. And then subsequently branching out, and at this point we branched out into 2 different streams. At this, we were doing agile too, so we were doing 2 streams, 1 design and then 1 technical. Design was 1 sprint ahead, while development was 1 sprint behind. And then we did rapid prototyping. So, let's see. Sure.
Good, thank you. All right, so what the hell is this? How can we make sense of this? So pretty much, after speaking to the product owner, we knew exactly what it was in here that we had to put in. All right, we know our end goal, let's work back from there. And that's essentially what you can see us doing for each and every single thing. And additionally, we're saying, okay, this particular section can be done in this sprint. We'll have to do this to this. But essentially, think of it as a cluster shot of mapping. How can we actually do this? But the one thing I really want to point out here is, little did we know, this was actually the, I guess, nucleus, or the first itty bitty baby iteration of what was going to be our final design. So we thought that was really cool. We constantly threw out ideas here, challenging each other what we thought would be useful, how can we go with user research, bucket if need be. And the other part that we also found interesting is that I really can't overemphasize how much and how important it is to have your sprint out there in the open, because the amount of times you actually speak to other stakeholders and it's like, I thought we were going to do this in sprint 5. No, it's up there, it's been up there for 2 weeks, you can read it. So that really helped from a communication perspective because there weren't multiple documents going around in a single source of truth. Pretty much whiteboard's a good best part. All right, so rapid prototyping, simple, iterated. Went through the first version, which would be the wireframes. Okay, how can we do this, tweak this? What's good for functionality? What do I want for users? What really works for us? And as we mentioned before, the North Star. These are the 3 things that we refuse to let go. I don't know if we're crazy, bitter, or just stubborn after speaking to this product owner, but we refuse to let collaboration, efficiency, and communication die. If those weren't there or didn't suffice in alleviating those existing issues, we knew the adoption would be low and no one would actually want to use this thing. So, embracing Agile. We spoke to this a little earlier. We solidified the roles. What's the PM doing? What are the designers doing? What are the devs doing? And the reason that we're actually highlighting this particular point is that this was a traditional waterfall organization. And putting this new form of methodology was actually very interesting for them, but I do have to give them the utmost credit because they were very willing to embrace it and actually go over the challenges and the upsides with it that we went through. So, as Radley mentioned, we went to the design and dev tracks and the daily stand-up with working team and stakeholders. Similar to the situation that we mentioned earlier, we would have loved for everybody to come, but unfortunately due to how busy the meetings were, not everyone could make it there all the time. Just want to double check, and that's our slide on embracing Agile. Please note the embracing part.
Boys, we're offended. You'll notice that our car is on fire now. So it's coming out. So like we mentioned, we were running Agile, and this was typically a waterfall organization. Agile didn't work with these guys. As you know, Agile's fast. Agile's you have to make quick decisions, and you have to iterate. These guys wanted a clear plan. And they wanted clear objectives and clear outcomes on a Gantt chart, pretty much. And this was a very important detail for them. We were trying to stick to Agile, wasn't working. We had to come up with a new plan. So it comes up, this is our third year, not everybody loves Agile. And the point we really want to make here is that it's not about Agile, but it's from a consulting perspective, it's working with your client and working with them on a process that works. So, you know, you don't really have to do Agile, you don't have to really do waterfall, maybe you could meet in the middle, and I think that's exactly what we did. We planned the project as waterfall, so they built a huge Gantt chart. But we did the Agile ceremony, so we did our daily stand-ups, we did the retrospectives, all of the Agile ceremonies. But the client wanted to see those clear objectives and what they were going to actually get at the end of the project process. So again, not everybody loves Agile. Try to work with your client, find a middle ground, and make sure everybody's happy. We just want to show this. So after our third error, it kind of feels like we're building up this momentum. We're doing it. Oh no! You guys suck. So the re-challenge. You know, we're getting our group back. The design process was working. Armin and I were hitting our stride. We were actually the right spot on the project. I hate to say that. Our designs were pumping out. Everybody's happy about the designs. We needed to collaborate on a process that works. That's kind of what I mentioned. Meeting in the middle, doing a combination of waterfall and Agile. I know it's a weird process, and Agile purists will hate the mixing of the two, but it worked. And if the client likes it, you know, you go for it.
There's a name for it, Radley. Water scrumple.
So I think it's Watch out.
Well, there's Agile as well, but, you know, we're water scrumple. Yeah.
And then figuring out development. We didn't go really too deep into the technical side of this project, but there were some technical obstacles that we were facing. So getting our group back, like I said, this is an established design process that me and Armin kind of carved out of that whiteboard. It was working, and the client really liked it. So why not use this on an ongoing basis? Even though they didn't like Agile, they liked this design process. And then at this point, Armin and I were very comfortable to transition duties. So he actually took a section of the intranet, and he took on the design while I transitioned to front-end development. And then collaborating on a process. So as I said, collaborating on a process that works for both teams. So Agile and waterfall, and then working as one team. When you get into headbutting with a client, it sometimes feels like, oh, we're on this side. Oh, we're on this side. No, you got to work as one team, or else the project's going to fail. And then figuring out development. Development was a real challenge for us. We were dealing with an offshore team that had a few skill gaps, and the client wasn't too happy, and this kind of fell within that Agile era as well. So we decided to blow up the offshore team and bring everything onshore. Essentially me going on to the front-end development team as well. And then integrating further onshore resources. So we got more people on the internal team, and we kind of said, you know, offshore, you did your thing, but we don't really need you anymore. And kind of realigning what we needed to do for development. And then finalizing our designs. So at this point now, our designs, we were very comfortable with what we produced. As I said, Armin and I hit our groove. We did this process that was working. We were very comfortable to show this to the product owners and the SLT team and the stakeholders. And at this point, yes, finally, we did it. So this was our final product. And if any of you saw the Nielsen Norman report, these were the screens that were there. I'm going to just point out a few of the features, Armin and I. So number one on the top left side, we wanted to really emphasize the use of imagery. As you saw in the as-is state, there wasn't a lot of imagery, not a lot of engagement, and you really get engaged when you visit a website, when you get these large images. So we wanted to use this tile approach.
So for point two, and just an overall comment on the actual design of the main page, you can see that we clearly took in a lot of the feedback from the product owners. Nice big imagery, make it look sexy. Now, the part that I have to be very honest with is that I'm very stubborn and I am bitter. And I refuse to let the quick links die because the users actually wanted them. So if you could kindly just remember that little section there, the little tab, we'll get back to that later.
Number two, number three here, this is Yammer integration. So what Yammer is, it's actually it's a tool that's kind of like Twitter, but for business. What it invokes is collaboration between the organization. So it's kind of like Twitter, you have your Twitter feed here, but we wanted to sprinkle in the Yammer integration throughout the whole intranet. So you'll notice here that you have your user here, you can actually click on this, then you can comment and view all the comments for that particular post. You can like it if you wanted to. This really invoked engagement and interaction between the colleagues for the different articles.
All right, and point four. I don't know if anyone remembers from 6 years ago when I spoke and said that there was a fiercely competitive work environment. That's okay, great. So we actually put trending now here. So what this actually allowed other individuals to say is that, look, this is what other people are reading. So they don't constantly feel like they're out of the loop and they're being beaten by their colleagues and put into this weird dark corner that wouldn't be necessarily helping for them psychologically. And there was actually one additional thing that I do want to point out, which we forgot to highlight. At the top, you won't really, everything is blurred out, but there's one thing I want to call out in particular, which is functional groups. So that is actually their word for departments. And as we were going through and doing our card sorting and building out the information architecture, consistently on every single bit of user feedback, we got a really positive reaction and a smile where it's like, oh, hey, you're calling this functional groups. Thanks for using our language. So that little bit of effort really went a long way. Okay, great. Would not let this part back. So remember number two, how there was that one little bit that we had to click on for it to jump out? Great, okay. Let's make this the part that's custom for the user. They can actually use what it is that they want to for the intranet to make it useful for them. We mentioned earlier how there were the stickies and everybody created their quick links and hot links. Okay, great. Why don't we first off try and find and actually provide that feature for them so they'll come to the intranet. They'll actually adopt it more. Hey, maybe while you're here to click this link, you can look at this particular article as well. So great. They have a reason to come and actually stay in it now for more than 2 seconds. Two, there's my events and recently viewed documents. This was through a lot of the user research and patterns that we were able to see amongst all the individuals in the sense that they're very, very repetitive. Okay, I have these 15, 20 things. These are the only pages I'm going to see. I don't want to see anything else. And for the events, Maple Leaf, I have to give them the utmost credit here. They are very, very training focused, and they really push their employees to learn. So this events part was crucial for them because they needed to know what was present, what they could learn, and what they were signed up for.
So this is one of the article templates that we've created. So on the point number 6, again, hitting that collaboration thing that we wanted to hit for our intranet, doing that Yammer integration so you can like the post if you want to, you can comment on it. If you click that comment button, it will scroll down to the bottom of the page and then you can do your comments over there. Having that accountability on every single page of who actually wrote the article. So if you had some interest in this article and you want to actually seek out who wrote this, you can actually click on this and view their profile. That's a O365 Microsoft profile, so that goes straight to their user profile, so you can get their email, their phone number, all their contact details. And This features a submitted article. So one of the pain points that we encountered while doing our user research was the site owners that were creating the articles or creating the content. You know, this was kind of a side job for them. They didn't have enough time to create articles or maintain the sites or do any of that type of secondhand stuff. You know, they had their day jobs to do. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to create this submitted article where anybody can go in, select a template, put their images in, put their contact in, and then boom, you have an article there. That actually reroutes to the site owners where they can approve or reject because you don't want anything just going up on your intranet. But this really alleviated the pain point for the site owners because they were bombarded with requests of creating content. So this was a nice little feature for them. And this is just how it looks like in mobile. We utilized the Bootstrap framework to make sure everything was mobile friendly. So all the components we created were all mobile friendly. You'll see the navigation was mobile friendly. And we heavily customized that Bootstrap framework. We customized the components to make sure it fit within the So lessons learned. Making assumptions early. Making sure we do that research up front instead of making our own assumptions. Number two, your users don't control the money. Again, we didn't know who our product owner was. We went into that meeting, got shot down. Let's make sure we identify who our product owner is and make sure he's involved or they are involved every step of the way. And not everybody loves Agile. Again, it's not about Agile, but it's working with your client on a process that works and that you and your client can come together and make sure you guys are working as one team. Some of the outcomes that happened post launching the new intranet, a lot more engagement happened, a lot more time spent happened, and essentially everybody just liked going onto their intranet now. They liked looking at the news posts, they liked searching for new things, they generally liked it, whereas people from the as-is state, they were trying to find something. They didn't necessarily want to go into their intranet. It was kind of a nuisance. So the new intranet, it was kind of a joy for them to go and look for stuff. And at the end of it, we won 2 awards, which we're very thankful for. And it kind of felt like, hey, we won.